Alright guys, so today we watch this video by BenBonk. Many people know him for his game Slime Launcher, and today he tried to make a roguelike deck builder in just 4 days, so I think he's experimenting for new game ideas. So let's check out his video.
Hey, what's up guys, it's BenBonk, and this past weekend I competed in the GMTK Game Jam 2025.
Alright, so again, my criticism for the GMTK Game Jam for this year 2025 was that the theme was broken or very stupid in my opinion. The theme was a loop, and a loop is like found in every video game because as one of the most well-known standardized names for the game mechanic is the game loop. So each game has a distinctive game loop that the player actually plays on. So when they choose the theme as loop, they cannot be implemented only then in the narrative design or the art direction, which is very hard to do in a game jam because you cannot really show a very strong narrative design or art direction in 1 week. So that was something I think is a very stupid choice for a theme for a game jam, and many people actually criticize this, not just me. So yeah, unfortunately the GMTK Game Jam for 2025 was not the best thing ever.
If you somehow don't know, the GMTK Game Jam is an annual game jam hosted by Game Maker's Toolkit where contestants have 4 days to make a game from scratch following a theme. This is one of the biggest game jams out there with over 35,000 contestants, and I haven't done a game jam in ages, so I wanted to give it my all. Now, normally I do game jams alone, but this time around I'd be teaming up with fellow indie dev X-Ray and my composer friend KJ. With our team formed, a few minutes before the jam started.
And again, I always advise, if you were not very familiar with solo game dev or you had lacked something like music or composing skills, you might need to want to work with a team in a game jam. It's better for communication. You will build a better communication for the community. You will be involved more in the community, which might give you better job offers in the future. Also, it helps you a lot in making the game way more polished, because people who are specialized in music and art can make way better art than people that are just specialized in coding, and most people are, unfortunately. So you might want to consider, if you really want to win and not just experiment stuff, you want to consider joining a team.
We hopped on a call to await the theme announcement, which was loop. As with all GMTK game jams, there's always a ton of ways you can interpret the theme. We could make a racing game where you loop in circles, or maybe have some kind of death loop or time loop mechanic.
We saw a lot of people making a roller coaster type building of a game. I saw 2 people right now, and this is something interesting. We are looking at a roguelike deck builder, so a deck builder just like Clash Royale for example, and a roguelike game. So this is a very unique mix that I am really interested to see how would he pull that in just a week.
So we opened up a Google Doc and started drafting out tons of things that could loop. Then with this list made, we tried brainstorming interesting
Again,
like
even a very small pre-production helps. Game jams should not involve pre-production. You should go right into production, but even very little, even 1-3 hours of pre-production is pure gold for video game industries, even in small game jams. So always try at least make in game jams, not in full production. Commercial production should have a very good amount of time for pre-production, 3 to 6 months. But for game jams, depending on the amount of the project, like of course you want to look for a better pre-production plan if you were, or a longer time for pre-production if you were like doing a full AAA open world game just like Red Dead Redemption 2, but less time if you were like making a 2D platformer or Metroidvania game just like Guacamelee for example. So that depends on the playtime and the complexity of the game and the industry size that you're in. But for game jams, you look for 1-2 hours, maybe max 3 hours or 4 hours in pre-production, and yet it's a very little time. It will help your game a lot and increase your chances in winning.
That could come out of these things that can loop. We bounced a ton of ideas off each other, but one idea that kept coming back would be some kind of game where you draw loops to collect items. We then flesh this out a bit more and imagine a game where you play as a farmer who has animals loose, and it's your job to wrangle them together inside of a lasso to capture them within a certain time limit. Then, depending on what animals you lasso, you'll either get points, which can be used to clear increasing points requirements set each round, or cash, which can be used to purchase new animals or upgrade existing ones. This way, the player will want to capture enough points so they don't lose out on the points requirement, but will also want to make sure they get cash animals so they have enough money for upgrades in the long term. We also thought it'd be cool to have synergies between animals, so maybe if the player catches either a sheep or a pig in their lasso, they get 5 points. But if they lasso a sheep and a pig in the same lasso, they'll get a points bonus or points multiplier. This way, the player can just spam lassos, but have to think methodically about what animals they wanted to capture to maximize their synergies. This idea sounded really promising to us, so we got straight to work. X-Ray started working on the lassoing mechanic, while I started working on setting up some of the underlying game architecture to handle upgrades, synergies, and deck building. After a few hours of work,
I think you were using Visual Code, not Visual. I know many people like to use Visual Code more than Visual Code Community because it's way lighter, but I would always advise if you have a good device with a good performance matrix and you could go with the system requirements of the Visual Community, you should go with it. It's way better than Visual Code.
After a few hours of work, I had a bunch of scripts together that were a good start to handle some of the core gameplay elements. For example, we had a game manager, shop manager, and synergy manager, which I was all working on slowly but surely. In the meantime, I checked in with X-Ray, and he was making good progress.
Okay, see, what he did there is something very good for optimization. It's just, I think this lacked the planning for assembly definitions, but this is definitely fine for game jams. Don't go crazy at thinking of assembly definitions only if you were like doing the game jam and then you are doing some polish to make it a full commercial game. But for a game jam, like this is a very perfect setup or a near perfect setup for coding for such a complex mechanic game.
In the meantime,
I think the thing that they will face that they are not the best at would be art, because I think they would be more focused on the systems, because making a deck builder roguelike in 1 week needs a lot of focusing on coding rather than on stats iterations more than the art. So I think their art would be not the best art direction ever.
X-Ray, and he was making good progress on the lasso mechanic. Now the player could hold down their mouse to start drawing a lasso on their screen, and if they let go, the lasso will autocomplete and close to form a circle. X-Ray's code could also detect objects that were inside of the complete lasso, which would be essential for a capturing system. In the call, I showed off my capture manager logic, which had a place for possible synergies the player could get, where we could specify animals required to form that synergy, and what bonuses the synergy would give, such as a points bonus, a cash bonus, or a points multiplier. KJ was also hard at work on the soundtrack for the game, so overall, things were going well. But at this point, X-Ray was going to work on the animal movement logic for the game, and I was going to work on the shop area. But I needed a bit of direction on what to make the shop look like, so we drafted out a rough concept. Essentially, we decided that the shop would take place inside of the farmer's barn, and inside, the player could purchase one of 3 things. They could either purchase a new animal that would be added to their barn/deck and have a chance of spawning the next round, an upgrade to one of their existing animals, or a new synergy/combo.
That's nice game loop there. It's a very nice game loop that could be way more scalable if they want to make it a commercial game in the future. It could be way more scalable, and it's pretty nice for a small game jam.
Imagine that the player would have every animal synergy unlocked by default and would have to discover them. However,
again, I would not advise this type of art for such a game. You would want to look for something more cute, because this is, it looks a bit cute, but it's not colorful. The outlines actually is not the best thing for such an art style, so you might look for a better, more pixel density, more features, so you can make like big eyes, glowing stuff, and maybe less darker color scheme, just to make things look actually much more colorful and cute than it's currently are, because we're looking at animals and stuff like that. You want to add blooms, you want to make all the shop and items colors very coherent, so that might like look at games like Animal Crossing and other like games similar to that for a color scheme and art direction.
After some discussion,
or maybe Kirby games, and These are some very good, colorful games. Even Mario World could be a very good example. Most of Nintendo games have a very amazing color scheme for their games.
How to be more fun if the player would have to purchase these synergies and form a deck around them, limited to 3 synergies at a time. So also on the right hand side, here is the synergies deck, and on the left hand side is the player's animal deck. We also had some ideas for passive upgrades here, like deck removal, but we scrapped those due to time limitations, so just ignore those for now. Anyways, with this plan in mind, I got to work making the shop. I set up the logic under the hood, while X-Ray continued to refine his lassoing system and create unique animal movements and logic. A few hours later, I had some basic shop code set up that would allow the player to purchase unique kinds of items, such as new animals, animal upgrades, and synergies. I set up some really basic UI here, as well as the logic where the player could have animals in their deck, and these animals would display on the left side of the screen here. And with that said, that was pretty much it for the first day. On day 2, I woke up and got straight to work on the art. For this game, we wanted to have a wide variety of animals available, so I had lots of sprite work to do. I got to work drawing all kinds of barn animals like sheep and cows, and while in the meantime, X-Ray continued working on the unique logic and movement for every animal in the game. Like for example, these ovals you see would be wolves, which would go after regular barn animals and chase them down. We decided we wanted to add a few predators like these, so the player can just loop the entire screen and capture everything. Instead, if the player captured a wolf or other predator, for example, their points or cash
That would fix a lot of errors and glitches in the game. That's an amazing way to deal with such glitches. So he does not just lose the entire screen and collect whatever he wants. This could make him much more careful in drawing the circles around the animals.
Cut in half to make the player think more methodically.
This is a very smart
Anyways,
gameplay
X-Ray also
idea.
got some really satisfying loop animations set up where the lasso would wrangle animals down to the bottom of the screen after capturing, as well as some really satisfying...
And this is addictive. This is something actually addictive, and it would work a lot for a mobile game if it were scaled, and again, better art direction. This game needs a lot of better art direction. I think it would be their most weak points. Because they have a limited time and they focused more on the gameplay. So this could work for a mobile game.
Points and cash pop-ups. But as for me, I was just chugging along creating animals. This took longer than expected because I found getting the shape of animals right was really difficult for me, and I often had to resort to using existing pictures or sprite art as reference. But anyways, after a few hours, I got 10 animals done. We had a bear, a chicken, which is definitely not heavily inspired by Stardew Valley, a cow, a dog, a fox, a goat, a horse, which was definitely also not heavily inspired by Stardew Valley, a pig, a sheep, and a wolf. Then staying on the art train, I started drawing up the sprite for the player's barn and just a bunch of other necessary art for the game. So by the end, we had a barn, a fence which never quite made it into the game, a shop inside where the player could purchase upgrades, and just a bunch of other miscellaneous stuff. But that was it for day 2, and I started off day 3 by spending some time choosing a font for the game and adding all the art I made into the shop area. This took ages, but by the end, the shop was really coming together and looking good. X-Ray, on the other hand, worked on getting my art implemented for the animals and finished every piece of animal logic so they all have unique point/cash values and movement patterns. But back to work, I started creating the deck logic for the shop. So now the player could toggle the deck with this button in the top left if they want to see the animals in their barn. They could also toggle this button in the top right.
This could just be improved. Again, the problem would be in their art direction. This could be way much more improved if they just added a lightning system with shadows for the sprites using the Unity lightning system, because they are already doing the video game in Unity. They could also use a heavy post-processing with maybe a custom texture on the film grain just to cover some of the pixel incoherency, and some bloom, some other effects. They should use URP for such stuff. More of fluid animation, maybe use text animator just to make something look more alive. So that could make their game way better in art direction very, very quickly.
Which would update when the player purchases
I like this pop-up
However,
animation.
since the player can only have 3 synergies in their deck at a time, if they purchase a synergy with their deck full, they would then have to replace one of their existing synergies. I then got to work on creating the animal upgrade logic to round out the shop, but before I could finish that, we did another check-in, and KJ, our composer, was flying through making tons of music for the game.
Yeah, that's actually a nice thing for a game jam. Yeah.
X-Ray had made great progress on the gameplay and polish. All my art was now fully implemented, and there was now a lasso timer, a bunch of super satisfying capture pop-ups, and a transition to the barn shop, which
I
had
would
yet to
change
finish.
the fonts. I know many people think you cannot merge other fonts with pixel art, but you could use a better font that's not just pixelated to make the game looks better, because this font actually sucks a lot. It ruins the whole thing.
So I hopped back into Sprite and changed up the barn to have these doors, which could open with an
Yeah,
animation.
that's
I then wrapped
nice
up the
cute
rest of my
animation.
shop logic and helped implement our shop transition into the main game scene to make things look smooth. After some work, now if I start the game, capture a few animals, and let the timer run out, the game will smoothly transition to the shop inside the barn, which looked so nice in my opinion. I then worked on a bunch of small stuff to get the game to a more functional and polished state. So I created
Yeah.
this dirt texture to go into the barn, created a simple start screen and scene transition.
Yeah, this
added
already
some
looks
grass
better, but
texturing,
again,
and now
their work on post-processing is not as hard as they could go, and change the font. Oh my god, this is so frustrating. The font is ruining a lot of the art here.
things were starting to come together. The game loop was there, and we just had a few more essential things to
And I like how they made the speed of the chicken way slower than beers, but they should also change the size difference of the animals. So the cow should be bigger, of course, than the chicken, and the bear should be, of course, bigger than the cow, because this is making a not comfortable illusion for the eye for the player.
X-Ray got started on making the tutorial and all the ideas for synergies in the game, while I created this screen to force the player to select a predator after every 3 rounds, as I realized that this was probably necessary to keep the game from becoming too easy. I then just did a bunch more shop work, getting descriptions to populate properly for all items in the shop, and made sure everything was set up and functioning there. I also created a simple lose panel if the player doesn't meet the points requirement for a given round, and created this point scaling logic to make it so every round the player will have to score more and more points to progress. And by this point, X-Ray had finished all these synergy concepts, so it's my turn to make art for all these synergies. We were pretty ambitious, having 24 unique synergies in the game, so I just quickly drew up a sprite for each, and by the end we had 24 unique icons, which I was really happy with. The final thing I did on day 3 was throw together some simple cover art for the game, and I called it a night. I woke up the next day at around 9 AM with 4 hours left in the jam. And one thing I feel like I need to mention at this point is that this was by far the hardest game jam I've ever done in my life. See, most game jams I've done in the past range anywhere from 24 to 72 hours. However, this game jam was a whopping 96 hours. So it really was an endurance battle, and combined with me getting less than ideal sleep each night, I was really starting to struggle. But we had no choice but to push on, or we weren't going to finish this game in time. The final 4 hours of the jam were mostly a blur for me. The previous night, X-Ray had stayed up adding all the music and sound effects our composer KJ made. With 4 hours left in the jam, we had to test and balance the game as much as we could while tying up all the loose ends. It was just a pure frantic grind, getting everything playable complete, and I really don't remember
Yeah,
every
again,
small
it's usually the hardest time is the last time or the last hours in the game jam. It's usually the worst thing that you could do, especially if you just wake up and there's only 6 or 4 hours lasting, everything's blurry, you're trying just to finish things as quick as possible and the pressure is on. So yeah, that's pretty normal for game jams.
thing I worked on, but as the jam deadline approached, we managed to get things done literally at the last minute. Actually, later than last minute. Thankfully, there was a 1-hour submission grace period, which kind of saved us to get our build up and running. But we got it done, and I was so exhausted, I immediately took a nap. And overall, I'm super happy with the game we created. I think X-Ray, KJ, and I worked super hard and well together.
Yeah, again, to me, if I want to change this to a commercial game, I would do the following. Make a better art direction, change the fucking font. This is a very annoying font, by the way. Maybe add more content. I would work for it from 3 to 5 months of working to add way more content for the game. I might do a better art direction, better UI, make it be shipped on mobile, because this would not be as interesting for PC players or console players as much as for the mobile players. Especially the drawing thing is much more suitable for people who works in or plays in mobile phones. It could be shipped to like like from 14 to 21 people ranging in marketing for players, and you could go and put a very small, not annoying monetization by AdSense, Google AdSense or whatever are using, and you could get a very successful launch from this game. There's multiple people who love this type of content, but you need to just put and fix the issues in a 3 to 5 month period if you really focused on the production of this game. So yeah, an amazing video by BenBonk. Definitely go and check out his channel. Thanks you for watching, and see you in the next episode.